This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with a Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Welcome to No One Told Us, the podcast that tells the truth about parenting and talks about all the stuff you wish you knew before having kids. I'm your host, Rachael, and today, Casey, I'm so glad you're here. We have a really important topic, and I'm really excited to dive in. It's also really fun to chat with you because we kind of know each other outside of this podcast, Instagram world now. So your sister, Caitlin Wilder, or yes. Caitlin Wilder from Wilder Beginnings, and you also work very closely with Dr. Sarah Orrick, who has been on the podcast as well with Mavita Health. So I would love for you to kind of just start telling us a little bit about your background and how you kind of got involved with Mavita.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to be here. And it's so nice to see you. And I was going to say, yes, we have a mutual friend who also happens to be my sister, who is Caitlin. I got involved with Mavita by way of my kind of personal journey through becoming a mom. I was a therapist prior to becoming a mom, and I had been kind of seeing people throughout like different phases of addiction, really. And that was a main focus of mine. And after having a baby and going through postpartum depression, and I also had postpartum anxiety, I couldn't see myself like doing any other work than working with moms and supporting parents. And so being at Mavita, which is a maternal mental health organization, but we also work with other partners as well, has been so wonderful because the care there is really collaborative, which is something I missed being in private practice. We get to work alongside prescribers. And a lot of times I really think about the work that we do initially with someone who is so early postpartum as truly like life-saving work. Because it can be really challenging to care for a baby when you're really struggling.
Yeah.
So we have individual therapy. I mean, I'm sure Sarah shared all this before, but individual therapy, group therapy, medication management, really everything under one roof, and a really beautiful library of content that has meditations and activities and all kinds of things to support moms and their mental health.
Yeah, it's such an amazing organization. You guys are doing such great work. Now, the purpose of our talk today is to kind of talk about the journey of having a child with a disability, which you are intimately aware of, that journey. And I'm curious if your son's disability is something that you were aware of right from birth and if that contributed to your mental health struggles. Can you talk a little bit about how, you first got that diagnosis?
Yeah. So my son, when he was born perfectly healthy, which was an incredible blessing. And when he was 10 months old, he got COVID and he was incredibly ill. And as a result, he actually had a stroke when he was 10 months old. And so that is how he came to have a disability. Within that, he has a cerebral palsy diagnosis. He also has a diagnosis of a movement disorder, which is called dystonia. And then he also has hemiplegia, which is oftentimes what a lot of individuals who've suffered a stroke will have, is one-sided weakness. So his stroke was on the right side of his brain, so the left side of his body is impacted. So, to have the experience of having, a healthy, as far as I knew, able-bodied child, and then overnight that all changing, that in itself has been a huge challenge to heal from. And then also all of the pieces of learning how to be the best parent for him now, now that he has a disability. So it's been a steep learning curve. Also, just, when you have a baby for the first time, you're also learning a lot.
Well, I was going to say, just becoming a parent for the first time is already such a huge load. And, especially if you're struggling with a mood disorder, like you mentioned, postpartum depression and anxiety. And then you add, especially with postpartum anxiety, so many parents, a lot of moms have anxiety around sleep or around feeding. But I hear from a lot of moms that have their anxiety kind of wrapped up in developmental milestones or health anxiety. So they're terrified that something like this will happen, or that their baby will get super sick, or that they won't develop, appropriately for their age. So when all of that actually happens, how do you cope with that? What was your initial reaction?
Thankfully, at that point, I had sought treatment for my postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. So I was in therapy, I was on medication, I was doing really well. So I had that going for me going into, a really big challenge. Honestly, I would say it's something that it's constantly evolving, like my healing from that. I have found the most helpful coping tools that I have right now are support from other parents of children with special needs or children with a disability. It was really amazing. Like when all of this happened, I had friends reach out who said, hey, you need to talk to my friend whose daughter had a stroke. You need to talk to my friend whose daughter, was at the same hospital and did the same rehab program. And just the amount of moms that all of a sudden came into the picture to help me and support me and hold my hand, it was the greatest gift. And through that, I was introduced into a support group that I've been a member of now for over 2 years. And it's moms, and we all have a child, whether it's another mom whose daughter had a stroke or a child who has a rare genetic condition, but we're all going through this experience of parenting a child in a different way. And so to be able to support each other, to give advice, it's the thing that anchors me, really, is to have other people that get it.
That's so, so important. I think anytime I talk to a parent with a child with disabilities, and anytime, this is so close to my heart. I was a special ed teacher for 10 years. And that was something when we, we're kind of giving a parent this new diagnosis, or this parent was kind of coming to us seeking this new diagnosis. That was one of the first things we always would recommend is please find a group of other parents that have this diagnosis in their life, because it is so, so important. There's no way that somebody who doesn't deal with this on a day-to-day basis there's just no way to understand. Yeah. And so I'm curious though, because you must still have friends and you still have family with, that they want to be there for you. They want to be in your life. They want to keep those relationships with you. How can people who don't have a child with a disability support you? What are things that they can say? What are things that maybe are not so helpful to say? How have you navigated those other relationships?
That's a great question. And I have a lot to say about it. I think that and again, when I'm saying this is what has worked for me, right? This is what has felt good to me. I don't want to speak for all parents in this scenario, because what works for me may not work for someone, and that's perfectly fine. I think first and foremost is just the acknowledgement of the fact that this is really tough. I have thought a lot about what it means to be a caretaker beyond kind of like the normal framework of that. And I think especially in this country, there is so little attention and care given to caretakers. And my son, how he presents now, he's able to go to a preschool with able-bodied children. It requires a ton of more of assistance and a ton more planning. And he has a whole team of people helping him. And that's all coordination that I have to do, and that's part of the caretaking. So I think acknowledgement of the fact that when you are a parent of a child with a disability or special needs, you're doing all the parenting. You're also probably doing therapy with them, whether it be physical therapy, occupational therapy. You are a nurse in many ways is when you administer medication. You are also a doctor looking for things, monitoring things, noticing things. And then you're kind of like a case manager, right? Like making these appointments, talking to different specialists. So I think that feels really good to me when someone can say like, hey, I see how much you've been doing, or I see how hard this is, and I'm really proud of you. That feels really good. I think also the other thing is talking about what happened. I think that's such a misconception that people think they shouldn't acknowledge a person's challenge or a hardship or a loss, which ultimately I think makes the person on the other side of it oftentimes feel more isolated. So I appreciate when people check in about my son and say, how is he doing? How are things going? How are you doing? How are you feeling? Because it's every day. It's our life. So I want people to check in. I want them to acknowledge.
It is such an incredible amount of work. I know that firsthand. And again, people who aren't in it just can't possibly understand, but just acknowledging that they see you could be really, really powerful. I'm curious. So he is 4, right? He's preschool.
He's 3.5.
3.5. Okay. So how aware is he of his disability, of his differences, and how do you kind of start to talk to him about that?
Yeah, I think we're in this interesting spot where he's kind of starting to sense that something is different, but he doesn't have full awareness. Mm-hmm. And I see that when he is around his peers and they are able to move super fast, like run across a play yard. Or the way that my son's hemiplegia impacts him is that he doesn't have a lot of use of his left hand. So when he has classmates who can really easily use 2 hands to navigate something, whether it's play equipment or even some toys. I mean, most toys, right?
Yeah. Putting a jacket on, so many things.
Yes. I see it show up as frustration for him, of like, he wants to catch up, or it's very hard to make another 3-year-old understand why they need to slow down and like match his pace. And so that can lead to frustrations. But again, going back to the idea of how important like communal support is, like I have these moms who are, 3 years ahead of me, 4 years ahead of me with their kids. And I've seen how they have navigated those conversations. And so I know that I have support in that. But I think the biggest thing for me that I think about as a parent is like how I talk about his disability, how I assume that responsibility and show energy towards it is going to directly impact how he views his disability. Mm-hmm. So if I, constantly talk about limitations or things that he can't do or frame it in a way that is a negative, I have no doubt that will impact him. So I want to be empowering him. I want him to feel like he can do anything, that there is no stopping him, that he is not the problem. It is the world around him that has not yet become fully accessible, that does not make accommodations. So that's something that I just try to kind of have in the back of my mind, is like, that is what I want him to be thinking and feeling and believing at all times.
Yeah, that's so huge. I love that reframe. For anyone listening that doesn't have a child with disabilities, talk to your kids about how there are people with all kinds of disabilities and differences, and not everybody's able-bodied and not everybody's going to look the same or do things in the same way. And it's so important to have those conversations with your kids about how they can still be inclusive and supportive. And that's so, so important. I'm so passionate about that. We're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about relationships. If there's one piece of advice I could give to new parents, it's to make your life as easy as possible. And one of the ways that I have liked to do that for the last several years since I became a mom is by using Thrive Market. Thrive Market is like your favorite health food store, but it's online and it's so much more affordable. And I'm talking premium brands like Primal Kitchen, Siete, Simple Mills. Everything's delivered right to your door and up to 30% less than what you'd pay at traditional stores. Everything that they sell is incredibly high quality and meets really high standards. They ban over 1,000 ingredients. I know lots of people are thinking about things like that right now. You can even filter by diet and preference, so things like gluten-free, low sugar, vegan, so you're not wasting time reading every single label at the grocery stores. I even stock up on some of my wellness favorites and pantry items, toothpaste. I love their diapers. Everything that they have has been so great for our family. I love it because I can get everything my family needs in one place, everything shipped directly to me, so it's one less thing that I have to think about and do throughout the week. You can also skip the junk without overspending if you head to thrivemarket.com/heysleepybaby. You'll get 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift. That's thrivemarket.com/heysleepybaby. thrivemarket.com/heysleepybaby. Summer is here, and one thing I definitely don't want to be doing and don't have the time to be doing is cooking over a hot stove for hours and hours every single night. That's where Factor comes in. Factor's chef-created, dietitian-approved meals are ready to eat in just 2 minutes, taking the hassle out of eating really well. Factor meals arrive fresh and ready to eat, perfect for any lifestyle for summer and beyond. They've got 45 weekly menu options, and you can pick gourmet tasting meals that fit your summer gains and goals. You can choose from options like Protein Plus, Keto, Calorie Smart, and more, and it'll power you from sunup to sundown because it's so nutritious, filling, and honestly really delicious. We absolutely love our Factor meals. We always get so excited when our box arrives. I don't know how they do it, but everything that we've tried is so yummy. It tastes like you're eating food from a restaurant. Even the steak. I seriously don't know how they make it so tender, but it is delicious. And my husband also always loves the shrimp dishes. So you can get started at factormeals.com/no-one-told-us-50-off and use code no-one-told-us-50-off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code no-one-told-us-50-off at factormeals.com/no-one-told-us-50-off to get 50% off plus free shipping. Casey, before the break, we were kind of talking about friendships and things that, your fellow moms that can kind of navigate these types of conversations with each other. But I'm really curious because the divorce rate is very high for families with disabled children. I'm sure we could all venture as to why that is. There's so much extra stress, so much extra financial strain. There's no time for each other. It's, not that surprising of a statistic, but it is something that people mostly want to avoid. So I'm curious if it's affected your relationship at all, or if there are themes that come up with your patients when you're kind of talking through these things in therapy.
I mean, it has 100% impacted my relationship. First of all, I think anytime you experience a trauma, like collectively with someone, the chances of you experiencing it in the same exact way, like that's just not going to happen. So even just when everything happened to my son and like being in the hospital and navigating that, it was like, oh, wow, we're having very different reactions just as far as like what came up for me in my history of mental health struggle. So it was like, oh my gosh, my anxiety is out of control now. He's not someone that deals with anxiety. It was more for him just about immense sadness and fear. So I think something that we did really well right away was kind of being like, what are your strengths? What are your strengths? And I always think with anxiety that anxiety can be a superpower sometimes. Anxiety can propel you forward. It can drive you to action. And I used my anxiety in that hospital to get answers, to advocate, to find the best specialists who we needed to talk to. So that was kind of like the role that I took on, was like, okay, when we're doing rounds, when things are happening, I'm going to be the one that's talking. I'm going to be the one that's advocating. And then also going off of my anxiety, I know that if I don't sleep, my anxiety is 10 times worse. And so I think for the first week that we were in the hospital, we were both sleeping there and it was terrible. I mean, I was not sleeping at all. And I think I hope this is a correct scientific fact, that men deal with sleep deprivation better than women, I've heard.
Yeah.
Which, like, how unfair, because we're the ones
classic. I know.
Yeah. Like, give us something. So he was kind of like, hey, you need to go home. Like, you need to sleep at home. And so from that point on, I think for the next 3 weeks, he spent every night at the hospital. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I would go home and sleep there and then get up and go back and do that all over again. And then I think we've kind of just continued to do that. It's like trying to identify what are our strengths. And again, like for me, being more of the advocate, being more of like the researcher is the role that I've taken on, and he can be more practical. We participated in a clinical trial that required us to do a type of therapy that it's very intense, and I had to walk away a lot of the time. Like, I couldn't handle the intensity of it, and so for him to be able to step in and do that was so helpful. But yeah, it's really hard. It is really hard when you're dealing with stressors that you never planned for, and most people in their relationship have never gone through something like this where they're having to navigate something so challenging, whether it's getting into couples therapy, both of the partners going into individual therapy, getting support where you need it, talking to people, and also being okay with the way that your partner is choosing to handle something if it's different from the way that you choose, which, like for my husband, he's not in a support group. That's not something that he finds helpful, and he knows that I, find it really helpful, and so he makes sure that there's time for me to do that.
I was just going to ask if he feels, or if he's in a support group, and if he feels that same pull to want to talk to other parents that are going through the same things.
He has not, and I don't know if that's like, I don't know if you hear your husband's conversations, but my husband's conversations they're a little more surface level, whereas when I'm like sitting down with my girlfriends and I'm like, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So I feel like...
Unfortunately, I'm married to a Cancer, so my husband is actually way deeper than I am. Oh, really? Is he a July or an August?
No, he's a June.
A June. Oh, he's a June.
I think that's a support group we need, is for partners of Cancers.
Yes, 100%. I would join that support group in a hot second. That's so interesting, though, and I think that's a really helpful thing for people to just keep in mind. It's like whenever you're dealing with grief or trauma, people all have their own ways of handling things, and it doesn't mean that your way is right and your partner's way is wrong. You're just different.
Yes. And I see that in the work that I do in all kinds of different situations that people go through. I think like you also have to kind of have the thing that you're coming back to, which is like, we both want what's best for our son. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what we're striving for at the end of the day. But I do think we're both working parents, adding on kind of the various things that I shared before that are like extra layers of parenting that we deal with for our son. You really have to be mindful of like, how do you spend time together? How do you find joy? And like for him and I, that would be when we were in the hospital and my son would be napping. We each had an AirPod and we would be watching Love Island, because it was like, we need a way to feel like normalcy, right? Yeah. Like we need a way to feel like, okay. We're having moments of humor and joy throughout the darkness.
Yeah. Love Island is a great choice. What a great distraction.
It was distracting for sure.
We are going to take one more quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about school and how you're planning on navigating that. We'll be right back.
In case you haven't heard, it's officially in Abercrombie summer. The A&F Vacation Shop has everything on your packing mood board. I desperately need their new one piece, the A&F Marina. It's strapless, so flattering, and paired with denim shorts will be my go-to beach outfit this summer. Finally, your suitcase isn't complete without finding that dress. The one for the photo shoot. Abercrombie's boho dresses have that perfect beachy, romantic look. Make it an Abercrombie summer. Shop their newest arrivals in-store, online, and in the app.
With a Venmo debit card, you can Venmo more than just your friends. You can use your balance in so many ways. You can Venmo everything. Need gas? You can Venmo this. How about snacks? You can Venmo that. Your favorite band's merch? You can Venmo this. Or their next show? You can Venmo that. Visit Venmo.me/debit to learn more.
You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo.
The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Card may be used everywhere MasterCard is accepted. Venmo purchase restrictions apply.
We are back, and I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on school, because I know your son is still just in preschool, but you've got to be thinking about, the next couple of years and starting kindergarten and what your plans for that are, and have your plans changed or shifted?
Yeah, I think I'm very fired up right now about things that are happening politically when it comes to the Department of Education. I feel a little bit more protected being in California. Mm-hmm. I'm also white. I'm very privileged. I think the intersectionality of, ableism is something that's important to call out. And my son is, a little white boy. So he, in that way, is going to be probably afforded more privileges just because of that. I feel very scared for parents of children with disabilities or special needs in some of the other states that do not feel the same way that I think a lot of Californians feel as far as protecting special education. Yeah. It makes me really scared because, and for your listeners who don't know this, like a lot of the therapy that children get is through the school system. It's therapy that they receive when they are in school. And so a child with special needs has an IEP plan, which is an individual education plan. And through that, they're able to receive services and accommodations, right? So if my son, goes into the school system, he would be receiving physical therapy. He would be receiving occupational therapy, possibly speech therapy, all of these services that are, again, free. Right. Because the cost of private therapy is so high. Mm-hmm. So to be able to have these services offered to him at school, that's a huge thing.
And not even just like those, they're not extra, but those extra therapies aside, he would also need, I'm assuming, would need someone with him, would need like a paraprofessional or an aide, whatever they're called in whatever district, to assist him physically throughout the day, to be able to navigate spaces where able-bodied children are able to be. Like we want these kids to be able to be included as much as possible in the general population. And a lot of those protections people don't understand are backed up by the Department of Ed. And this is a very, very scary territory we're heading into. And again, we're safe in California maybe right now, but it's a slippery slope once you start dismantling things like this.
Yeah, and part of even what the Department of Education covers is even the programming that children like from newborn to 3 years old receive. So that early intervention that children receive.
Which is so important.
Yes. That's when, especially for my son with a brain injury, I can't even tell you, like, all I was hearing in the hospital was like, he needs to start therapy. He needs to get into therapy. Mm-hmm. Like the way that, the neuroplasticity of the brain works was like, he needs to be doing these things now. Yeah. And so when we got out of the hospital, it was like, I'm not sure if regional center is the term used in states outside of California, but in California, it's the regional center. And, he was assessed immediately. He was getting PT, OT, speech. They have a child development specialist that comes to your house. And that's the other thing. This is happening for a lot of people in their homes. Mm-hmm. So people that aren't able to leave their homes. Another thing that happened for me after my son's stroke was that I was so fearful of him getting sick again and something like this reoccurring. So to have people come into our home and to be able to provide these services was so necessary. And this is what's on the line, right? Like these are basic rights. Like any child should have access to a fair education. Mm-hmm. Any child should be able to go to school and have accommodation so that they can succeed. Yeah. Right. And that's what we're talking about. Like when I zoom out and think about that, it's so wild to me that this is up for debate.
It's really infuriating, actually. It's devastating. It's infuriating. And like you said, even if you're fine, even if your child is fine, like you still have empathy for the people who are absolutely not going to be fine, particularly people of color, people living in very rural areas, very red states. And it's really going to be devastating. And things are going to unfortunately have to get a lot worse before people listen and before things get better. I'm curious. So you're thinking about public school, obviously. Mm-hmm. because these services are not guaranteed or provided anywhere else.
Private school does not need to,
they don't need to do anything that they don't want to do. So that's another thing people say is like, oh, well, just go to private school. Like if you need something so bad, if you don't like education in public schools, just go private. It's like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Are there parents in your community, like in your support groups and stuff, that are already kind of seeing any effects of this, or are things still pretty status quo in California? You're in Southern California, just to know too.
I would say the parents that I'm speaking to so far, services are continuing on for them. And one of the moms in my support group actually shared a really beautiful message that the superintendent of her school district shared, which was like, hey, we are going to fight for this. We are going to protect these, the kids in our school, and we'll do what we have to do to make sure that everyone continues to receive the education that they have a right to.
Yeah.
So it was good to hear that like people on that side of education also feel the same kind of sense of like, yeah, we need to fight for this. This is important.
Okay, well, that's reassuring. I hope anybody that's in education listening to this just feels a little bit of a sense of relief hearing that. But also, I think it's important that we don't let our guard down and that we do continue to fight.
I was just going to say, I think what's important too, like you said, is for parents of able-bodied children or children that are developing typically, we need you. We need you to join us. Like, we need you to also be upset. We also need you to be angry. Like, this is 100%. Something that any parent should be riled up about.
Of course. Well, and it's like, you don't always plan for your child to have a disability, right? Like, you are a testament to that. Like, you thought that you had this baby who was able-bodied and healthy, and then things changed overnight. So that could happen to any of us, right? Like, anything can happen at any point, and then you're the one that's in those shoes, and your child is the one that needs that extra support in those services. So I think that's a really good point. My next question was going to be kind of related to that. And just before we wrap up, what would be something that you would say to a parent who's maybe got like a hunch that their child has something going on with them that might need some extra support? Like, they don't know for sure if there's like a diagnosis there, or they feel like they've talked to a lot of different doctors or different providers and they're not really getting anywhere. How do you recommend people advocate them for themselves without completely spiraling out of control? Because it can be so stressful and it can be such a long road.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, first I would just want to like give the biggest hug to that person, because I think when you are at the beginning of a journey like this, the overwhelm that you feel and also the sense of uncertainty that you feel can just be debilitating. I think something that I really struggled with was like, okay, I thought my life was going to look like one thing and now it looks like another thing. And I think I want to normalize the grief around that, and that it's okay to be grieving that. That doesn't make you a bad parent because you have grief. Like, I love my child endlessly, and I also grieve. And that's okay. I think, again, going back to this idea of like communal support, like if you are in the beginning stages of this, like whether it's going on social media and finding a group to join, listening to podcasts. There's so many incredible podcasts now for parents of children with special needs. There are podcasts about children with rare diseases. There are podcasts about children with autism. Like, there's really so much out there. And again, I think community can be so healing and so helpful. Find people on social media who are already in this community. So like, I follow a bunch of adult creators who have had strokes or who have cerebral palsy, or who are disabled, and I'm just getting information from them and learning from them. But again, I think getting support, being kind to yourself, that this is hard and that's okay. And, leaning on the people around you, telling people really what you're feeling. Like, this is really hard for me. I'm really struggling. I think to feel like you have to bottle that up or bury that, you don't need to do that.
Yeah. If someone asks you how you're doing, you don't have to say, fine.
I have a good story about that. When we got out of the hospital, my sister had set up a food train or a meal train for us. And I was very specific about like, once we got home from the hospital, I just wanted people to have food delivered. I didn't want to have to like interact with anyone because I just was like, I'm not well. I don't want to have to talk to people. And for some reason, these two people decided, no, we're going to come hand deliver the food. So I opened the door and they're like, hey, how are you? And I was like, really bad. Yeah. I'm really bad. And they were like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My 10-month-old son had a stroke. We're pretty bad. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, like, here's your food. We hope but that kind of gave me the permission to like, I'm going to be honest with people. I'm not going to try to like, I'm not going to waste energy making sure someone else feels okay with my like upset or with my distress. And so that kind of gave me a little bit of freedom to be like, I'm having a hard time. And I'm not going to hide it.
No, I love that. That's great. I think that's so important for people to just know that like, you don't have to make other people feel comfortable with what you're going through. It's not your job. I mean, your priority, that's like the lowest thing on your priority list at that point. Like you're so emotionally spent.
Yes.
My last question is something that I try to ask everybody. Sometimes I forget, but I try to remember to ask everyone, what is something that you wish you knew before becoming a parent, just in general? Like, what is something that you feel like nobody talks about enough or nobody prepared you for before you entered motherhood?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I think probably just that, like, it's going to be okay. Like, I think that I've weathered so many storms now since I've become a parent, and there were times where I could not imagine feeling joy again. I could not imagine smiling, laughing. And I do all of those things now. And I think that sometimes the greatest challenges that we face, like as cheesy as that is, like it's your greatest teacher. Like what happened to my son, what happened to my family, it has made me a more empathetic person. It has made me a better person. It has made me more aware. It has taught me so much. And so I think, like let yourself feel the feelings, let yourself fall apart and know that it will be okay. Like you will laugh again, you will find joy again. And something I wanted to share with your listeners was, because I know I've talked again and again about communal support and how important that is, was that if there is anyone listening who is in a similar situation and feeling like I can't find a support group, I don't know where to turn, send a DM to the Mavita Health Instagram account, and we're going to get those up and running so that we can have spaces for parents to come together and talk and process and feel.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I was just going to ask before we let you go for you to just share where people can connect with you or find you.
Yeah. So the Mavita Health Instagram, I also have an Instagram. It's when everyone knows who my sister's sister is and then sees my Instagram, they're going to be like, why hasn't she helped you? But my Instagram is Therapy with Casey. I'm working on it. Okay. I'm trying to get there. But
you're a little busy.
Yeah. Well, and Caitlin's just such a natural in front of a camera, Yeah, so I'm working on it, but please reach out there. Like, I'm also just happy to talk to anyone. Like, I can't even tell you the amount of strangers I've talked to on the internet who've helped me. So if I can be that to anyone else, please reach out. I want to talk. I want to help. Like, extending that hand to other parents going through it is the most important thing that I can do. And so I'm happy to talk with anyone who needs a friend.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for offering that. And I will put all of that in the show notes for people too. Casey, this is such an important conversation and such a topic that is tender to my heart. And I know that lots of other people will resonate with it too. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was so nice to be here.